In 1333, two-thirds of the population of Hopai in northeastern China died. And by 1334, 90% of Hebei, China died. A bacteria, Yersinia pestis, was causing people to fall deathly ill, and the bacteria was on the move. In 1346, the main fear within Europe was the Mongol invasion from the east. Yes, there were rumors of an illness that was spreading along the trade lines, but the Mongols were already there, and they had conquered Russia and were now pushing into what is the modern day Ukraine. However, the Mongols were not alone. They were the unknowing carriers of the illness, bringing the bubonic plague to Europe. The Mongols had placed Kaffa, a port city on the Black Sea, under siege. The city remained strong due to its port, and the merchants still were coming in and out of the city via the harbor that was protected by massive walls. However, when several Mongol fighters fell ill and died, their commander decided to catapult the dead bodies into the city. It is the first known use of biological warfare in history, and it had catastrophic ramifications. The Mongols were purposely trying to make the people in Kaffa ill, and it worked. When the plague broke out, merchants and sailors fled. One Genoese ship traveled to Italy and landed in Messina, but the dockmaster noticed the people on board were ill. He ordered the mooring ropes to be undone and sent the ship back into sea. However, in the brief time the vessel was tied to the docks, rats and mice had left the ships via the ropes. The city of Messina soon after saw plague break out. Within a few months, Italian, French, and Spanish ports were all suffering from what would become the Black Death. Now, scientists have theorized that fleas on rats help spread the Black Death, as fleas would bite the rat and any really rodent that was infected and contract the bacteria. Then the flea or lice would bite a human and infect them after their host had died or simply after they moved on. However, modern research suggests that rats were not the actual main reason for the spread of the plague. It was humans. Studies that have simulated the spread found that rats and fleas alone would not have actually transmitted and spread the disease at the same rate as humans could, because humans can simply move faster and move farther. And so, when you look at humans who also carry lice and fleas, you can see how it can travel all the way from China over to the port city in Italy much faster than if it was just simply riding on the back of a rat. Now, this outbreak had a high mortality rate because it was actually three plagues all in one linked to the same bacteria. The bubonic, septicemic, and pneumonic plagues wreaked havoc on the people. Around 70% of the population of Florence died just within a few weeks. It also had the perfect conditions to spread as the cities were unsanitary, causing for the perfect breeding ground for fleas. The bubonic plague attacked the lymphatic system. At first, a person would experience headaches, fevers, and chills, along with extreme fatigue. Then the lymph nodes would begin to swell, the classic symptom. A large and painful bump would form, known as a bubos, and it would grow to the size of an egg. Internal bleeding would then happen, and if one would see blood within their stool, well, it was a sure sign of death. On average, a person died a week after they contracted the plague. Now, if one was looking at paintings or images of the bubonic plague and see that a person's entire body was covered with huge welts or these huge buboes, then most likely that image is actually not of the bubonic plague, but of another, because the actual buboes would only form on the lymph nodes, not the entire body. So there's a little side bit in case you're ever trying to figure out if the picture or painting is authentic to the Black Death. In terms of the pneumonic plague, it would attack the lungs, and the person's chance of survival was slim. Even slimmer would be your expectancy to live through the septicemic plague, which would poison the bloodstream, and one would die even before usually the buboes formed. As millions of people started to fall ill across Europe, society broke down. In some cities, people were bricked into their houses and left to die if it was suspected that a household member had contracted the plague. People blamed the Jewish population, causing many innocent people to be slaughtered. Some people turned to the church for answers, but the church was unable to explain such a catastrophic event as this in the midst of its own schism or split. Furthermore, the massive loss of life was causing inflation, or the prices of items to rise, which then in turn caused revolts. When the plague started in the major trading ports or towns in the cities of the Mediterranean, the ports closed, causing massive trade disruptions and a significant impact on regional economies. After the plague swept through, peasants demanded higher wages as it was hard for landowners to hire anyone to plow their fields. England then passed the Statute of Laborers, which stated that employers had to keep wages at a 1346 level, and workers had to work for anyone willing to hire them or be placed in the stocks. In time, employers added incentives like foods or goods, or simply employers ignored the laws and paid their workers more so that they could actually have enough workers to keep their operation going. As wages went up, peasants began to buy more clothes and food, which increased the demand on wool and produce. Some peasants moved away from their manors or even purchased their own land, which was available due to the Black Death. When feudal lords tried to return to the old system, revolts broke out, like the English Peasants' War of 1381, where the peasants presented their demands personally to King Richard II. Society had to deal with the loss of so many lives in such a short time. Various areas throughout Europe had to bury people in mass graves as they could not keep up with the numbers. The church simply did not know how to respond to the situation, and so small movements that were seen as professing heresy began to grow. The flagellants arose during the Black Death as a group that whipped themselves or flogged themselves so that God would be merciful to them. Although the Pope spoke out against it, their movement grew and grew, especially with subsequent plagues. Plague art also became a thing. It depicted the pestilence and how it devastated Europe and was a common theme for art. The concept of death itself was raw, and so the dance of death was depicted in poetry, art, and music. It was simply a way for people to express themselves during a time with so much suffering. In the end, it is unknown exactly how many people died from 1347 to 1351 in Europe, but estimations are around 25 million, or between one third to two thirds of the population. However, the suffering did not end there, as outbreaks would reoccur in various areas around Europe for centuries to come, like the Great London Plague of 1665. If you have any questions or comments on the Black Death, leave it down below. Also, remember to hit that like and subscribe button so that you can know when we post new content. And as always, thank you for listening. Bye bye.